"The kid's not yours," my sister-in-law revealed, after I raised him for 5 years. I didn't yell. I just filed for divorce and let the truth handle the rest. Months later, wife came back crying for help. Sup Reddit. Never planned on writing this out, but after the shitstorm that hit my life, I figured documenting it somewhere might help some other poor bastard avoid my mistakes. Fair warning, there's no fairy tale ending here. I'm 35 male, a staff sergeant at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. Been Army since I was 19. Not from some decorated military dynasty, just a kid from Lansing who chose the recruiter's office over community college when all my options looked like dead ends. 16 years later, I've got 2 combat deployments to Afghanistan, 1 to Iraq, and enough specialized training in SIGINT and counterintelligence to fill a resume that would cost most civilians 6 figures in student loans. I've seen enough combat to know that sometimes the most dangerous threats aren't the ones you can see coming. Sometimes they're sleeping right next to you. Met my wife, 33 female, Abby 8 years ago through my buddy Carson's 4th of July cookout. Classic military gathering, American flags everywhere, coolers full of drinks, and guys comparing deployment stories while their wives rolled their eyes. She was finishing her master's in clinical psychology, interning at the VA hospital where Carson's wife worked. Unlike most women at these things, she wore this fancy sundress instead of the usual cutoffs, and was discussing Jung and Freud instead of complaining about the PX or housing allowances. She had this way of making eye contact that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. It was disarming. Effective. Her family was Connecticut upper middle class. Surgeon father, teacher mother, summer homes in Cape Cod, and elite private education. Basically a different universe from my blue-collar Michigan upbringing where vacation meant fishing at my uncle's cabin and college was something other people did. Dad worked the assembly line at the GM plant until his back gave out. Mom cleaned hotel rooms and did tax prep during filing season to make ends meet. They divorced when I was 14, turning our already tight finances into a mathematical impossibility. I started working at 15, pumping gas after school and bussing tables on weekends. By senior year, I was pulling more hours than some of my teachers. Our connection made no sense on paper, but somehow it clicked. She liked my stability and no bullshit approach to life. I appreciated her intelligence and the way she could navigate social situations I'd stumble through like a bull in a china shop. After 6 months of dating, I proposed. She said yes without hesitation, which honestly surprised the hell out of me. The wedding was small, just 50 people at the base chapel. Her family clearly expected something fancier, but I wasn't going into debt for a single day's celebration. Abby seemed happy with it. First year of marriage was an adjustment period. We argued about money. She thought my refusal to touch my emergency fund for a new living room set was paranoid. I thought her insistence on eating out 4 times a week was financially irresponsible. Eventually, we found middle ground. I loosened the purse strings a bit. She got better about tracking expenses. Basic compromise. Abby's younger sister, 30 female Claire, was always the elephant in the room during family gatherings. 3 years younger than Abby, perpetually figuring things out after dropping out of 3 different college programs. Every time I saw her, she had a new look, new boyfriend, new business idea that Abby's parents were refusing to fund. She'd drift between serving tables at upscale restaurants, selling essential oils on Facebook, and consulting gigs that never seemed to materialize into actual income. Despite her flakiness, Claire had moments of surprising clarity. Once, while Abby was helping her mom in the kitchen, Claire looked at me seriously and said, "You know she's always gotten everything she wants, right? Since we were kids. She just knows how to make it look like she deserves it." At the time, I shrugged it off as typical sibling rivalry. "Claire's always been the family disappointment," Abby told me once, after a particularly tense Thanksgiving where her dad had made pointed comments about Claire's latest failed relationship. "Dad paid for my education because I actually finished what I started. Claire just wants handouts without the work." I mostly stayed out of it. Nothing good comes from inserting yourself into family politics, especially when you're the outsider from the wrong side of the tracks. 5 years back, our son Ethan was born. I'd just made staff sergeant, and Abby had established a small but growing private practice specializing in military family counseling. Perfect timing, or so I thought. I used 2 weeks of carefully saved leave to build the nursery, repaint the walls, and assemble furniture. Painted the walls this light blue color that Abby picked out from about 50 nearly identical swatches. Those first months, I mastered diaper changes with military precision and could prepare a bottle one-handed while holding him in the other arm. I still remember the moment they handed him to me in the hospital. Tiny little thing, face all scrunched up, yelling his head off. I'd faced Taliban fire without flinching, but holding this 7-pound human had my hands shaking. I promised him right there I'd be a better father than mine had been, that I'd always be present, always reliable, no matter what. The military life meant I missed some moments. A 3-week training rotation in California had me gone for his first steps. But I made it work, volunteered as assistant coach for his t-ball team, even though I knew shit about baseball. Set up a camping tent in the backyard for adventures when I was home. Built routines around my shifting schedule. I'd seen too many military marriages crack under the pressure, too many distant fathers who became strangers to their kids. That wasn't going to be me. Funny thing about military life, you learn to squeeze meaning out of small moments. Reading Goodnight Moon for the 15th time becomes precious when you know you're deploying next month. Every birthday, every school event, every ordinary Tuesday dinner takes on this weight because you're acutely aware how easily you could miss it. I kept detailed logs in my phone of Ethan's development. First words, first foods he liked, the way he always slept with one arm thrown above his head, just like I did. The precise sound of his laugh when I threw him up in the air. Data points I could review during deployments. Something to hold on to during long nights overseas. Our life wasn't perfect, but it was solid. 3-bedroom ranch-style house in a decent neighborhood near base, with that covered patio I built during a 4-day weekend. 2 reliable vehicles, my F-150 and her Subaru. Modest savings in the TSP. Annual trips to visit both our families. Abby and I weren't exactly burning up the sheets anymore. Typical story after years of marriage and parenthood, but we operated like a well-oiled machine in most aspects of life. Partners. A team. At least that's what I thought until 3 weeks ago. It was a Tuesday when Claire texted me. Not unusual to hear from her occasionally. She'd send memes or ask about Ethan, but the content raised flags immediately. Need to talk to you. Alone. No, Abby? Important. Can we meet? This message tripped every alarm, but intelligence gathering is always the first phase of any operation, so I agreed to coffee at a Starbucks near the interstate. Drove there in silence, mind running through scenarios. Maybe Abby was planning a surprise party. Maybe Claire needed money. Maybe she was in trouble and didn't want her sister to know. I'd helped her once before when her car broke down and she couldn't afford repairs. Nothing prepared me for what was coming. Claire looked rough when she arrived. Not hungover or strung out. I'd seen that version of her before at family gatherings, but tense. She constantly checking the door like she expected Abby to burst in at any moment. Thanks for meeting me, she said, not touching the overpriced latte I'd bought her. I wouldn't do this if there was another way. Just tell me what's going on, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. Military habit? Assess the situation before reacting. She took a deep breath. Dean, I think Ethan isn't yours. My expression didn't change. Years of briefings under pressure teaches you to control your reactions. That's a serious claim. What makes you think that? Claire pulled out her phone, navigated through some screens, then slid it across the table. These are emails between Abby and me from right before she told you she was pregnant. The exchange was dated 5 years and 3 months ago. Abby, I really screwed up this time. Justin and I got carried away at Dad's party. Dean can never find out. Claire, are you serious? You cheated, Abby, with my Justin. What are you going to do? Pretend? Abby, nothing. I'm not ruining my marriage over one stupid mistake. The timing works out. Dean's been gone for training. He'll never question it. Claire, this is so wrong. You need to come clean. Abby, I already talked to Mom and Dad. They agree it's better to protect the marriage. One night isn't worth destroying everything we've built. Claire, of course they took your side. They always do. I can't believe it. Abby, stop being bitter. They're being practical. What Dean doesn't know won't hurt him. I'm putting this behind me and focusing on my marriage. You should too. Move on. I read through the entire thread twice, memorizing key details while my brain processed the implications. Justin was Claire's boyfriend at the time, some tech startup guy with a man bun and those stupid hipster glasses she'd been dating for about 8 months. I remembered meeting him at her father's retirement party, finding him pretentious but harmless. The party had happened during my month-long training rotation at Fort Irwin. The timeline matched perfectly. Justin had this smug way of talking about his disruptive fintech startup that made everyone's eyes glaze over. He wore designer clothes with deliberately frayed edges and called everyone my man, regardless of rank or station. The kind of guy who'd take credit for your ideas in a meeting and somehow get promoted for it. I vaguely recalled Abby dancing with him at the party, footage her mother had captured on video and sent in the family group chat. Nothing inappropriate, just a casual swing around the floor. Had there been something in their body language I missed? Some secret signal that flew under my radar? I mentally reviewed every interaction, searching for clues I'd overlooked. Why tell me now? I asked, voice level. It's been 5 years. Claire's eyes hardened. Last week, Abby tried to sabotage my new relationship by telling my boyfriend I have borderline personality disorder and a history of fabricating stories about people. Used her therapist credentials to make it sound official. She's crossed a line, using her professional status to make me look crazy. She's been holding this over me for years. Anytime I'd bring up the cheating, she'd threaten to tell our parents I was making up lies about her perfect marriage. They'd believe her too. They always do. Dr. Abby with her perfect life versus screw-up Claire who can't hold down a job. I nodded slowly. You have copies of these emails? I've kept everything, she replied. Abby's held this over my head for years, threatening that if I ever told you, she'd make sure our parents cut me off completely and tell everyone I'm mentally unstable. I'm done being her punching bag. I thanked her for the information, promised to look into it, and left. On the drive back to base, I replayed every moment from Ethan's early life. Abby's insistence that her blonde hair meant recessive genes could explain his features that didn't match mine. How she'd get defensive whenever anyone said he looked more like her side of the family. That night, while Abby was at her Tuesday therapy group meeting and Ethan was asleep, I silently entered his room and collected a few strands of hair from his brush, sealing them in a plastic bag. The next morning, I found an old electric razor in my gym bag that hadn't been used since before Ethan was born. My DNA sample. It wasn't hard to get the samples. The hard part was looking at the sleeping boy I'd raised for 5 years and wondering if everything I thought I knew was a lie. I drove to Phoenix the next day, found a discreet testing facility that advertised no questions asked paternity testing, and paid cash. $450, used a P.O. box for the results. The technician said 3 to 5 business days. The wait was excruciating. I found myself studying Ethan's features obsessively. The shape of his ears, the cowlick in his hair, the way his eyebrows drew together when he concentrated on his Lego projects. Had I been seeing what I wanted to see all these years? While waiting, I initiated what we call operational security measures in the military. I didn't move all our money. That would alert Abby immediately. Instead, I transferred half our savings to a separate account at USAA. Legal, documented, but secure. I gathered copies of all important records: marriage certificate, Ethan's birth certificate, tax returns, property documents, and stored them in my secure locker at work. Reviewed our finances with clinical detachment. We had $42,368 in savings. My TSP retirement account had $127,895. The house had about $85,000 in equity based on recent comps in the neighborhood. 2 car loans, both manageable. No credit card debt. I'd made sure of that. I contacted a divorce attorney recommended by Martinez, a guy in my unit who'd gone through a similar situation last year. Paid the consultation fee from my personal account, not our joint one. $350 for an hour of his time. The attorney was brutally honest. Arizona has presumptive paternity laws. Being on the birth certificate and acting as the father for 5 years means you're legally considered the father regardless of biology. However, proving deliberate paternity fraud might give us some options for reducing or eliminating ongoing support obligations. He walked me through worst-case scenarios, best-case scenarios, most likely outcomes. I took notes like I was being briefed on an upcoming mission: force deployments, logistical requirements, primary and secondary objectives. All this happened while maintaining absolute normalcy at home. I still made Ethan's lunches, still mowed the lawn every Saturday morning. Discipline at its finest. On Friday, the results arrived. I opened the PDF with steady hands. Probability of paternity, 0%. I stared at the screen for a long time. 15 years of combat training teaches you to control your breathing when taking a hit. I applied those same techniques now. That weekend, I suggested Abby take Ethan to visit her parents in Tucson. You guys haven't seen them in a while, and I need to catch up on that maintenance project for the truck. Could use the garage space. She seemed pleased by my thoughtfulness, kissing me on the cheek before packing their overnight bags. Once they left, I moved efficiently, packed what actually mattered: military awards and memorabilia, essential clothes, personal documents, and the few photos I couldn't bear to leave behind. Left the 75-inch TV we'd bought last Black Friday. Left the new bedroom set. Left the kitchen gadgets she'd accumulated. The apartment I'd arranged through a military housing connection was sparsely furnished but functional. 10 minutes from base. A temporary FOB, forward operating base, until I figured out next steps. I didn't trash the place. Didn't leave dramatic notes. Didn't change the locks. Just removed myself from the equation with tactical precision, the kind of clean extraction we practice in the field. When Abby and Ethan returned Sunday evening, I was waiting at the kitchen table, test results and divorce papers laid out neatly beside my laptop. Ethan ran in for a hug, which I returned genuinely. None of this was his fault. Hey, buddy, why don't you go check out that new Lego set Grandpa got you? I need to talk to Mom for a few minutes. When he was safely in his room, I gestured to the chair across from me. We need to talk. Abby's face changed as she registered the documents. First confusion, then recognition, followed by what I now know was calculated panic. What's this? Her voice was steady, but her hands weren't. DNA test showing Ethan isn't my biological son, and divorce papers citing paternity fraud. Her response followed a predictable pattern I'd seen countless times in military interrogation training videos. First, denial. That's impossible. The lab must have made a mistake. When I didn't respond, she switched to deflection. Claire put you up to this, didn't she? She's always been jealous of me. She'll say anything to hurt me. I remained silent, letting her work through her script. You were gone for weeks at that training rotation. Do you know how lonely that gets? All those deployments and training missions while I sat here by myself. When that gained no traction, she pivoted to manipulation. You'd abandon Ethan? After 5 years? He calls you daddy. He doesn't know any other father. What kind of man walks away from a child he raised? I'd anticipated every argument. I'm not abandoning anyone. I was lied to. For 5 years, you let me believe he was mine. That's not a mistake or a moment of weakness. That's 5 years of deliberate deception. Every single day. That night, the calls started. Her father first, his surgeon's arrogance on full display. Dean, this is ridiculous. You took vows. Marriage has rough patches. Be a man and work through this. I could hear the implied class distinction in his voice, as if my blue-collar background meant I should be grateful his daughter had married me at all, as if discovering a 5-year lie was something real men should simply accept. Her mother next, all concerned sympathy. Think about what this will do to Ethan. Is your pride worth destroying a child's security? My response to both was identical. Covering up paternity fraud for 5 years isn't a rough patch. It's deception. If you're concerned about Ethan's welfare, perhaps you should have advised your daughter to be honest 5 years ago instead of encouraging her to lie. The next morning, I filed the divorce petition at the county courthouse. $318 filing fee. Walking out, I felt no triumph, no satisfaction, just the quiet focus of a soldier executing a necessary extraction. That afternoon, Abby showed up at my apartment unannounced. Eyes red, makeup smeared, wearing the same clothes as yesterday. Classic emotional warfare tactics. Please, she said, voice breaking. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. I made one mistake 5 years ago. It wasn't one mistake, I replied. Every birthday card you watched me sign as dad. Every Father's Day gift you helped him make. Every time you let me believe he had my eyes, my laugh, my blood. Those weren't mistakes. Those were choices. What about Ethan? He loves you. And I love him. That hasn't changed. But I won't stay in a marriage built on lies. She left after an hour of alternating between tears and anger. I expected her to slash my tires or throw my remaining belongings onto the lawn. Instead, she went with a more sophisticated approach, immediately filing for emergency temporary custody and support, claiming I displayed erratic and potentially dangerous behavior by abruptly abandoning the family home. Her attorney, hired remarkably quickly, suggesting previous consultation, submitted a statement painting me as an unstable combat veteran whose military training made me potentially dangerous during emotional distress. Classic PTSD stigmatization play. It might have worked if I hadn't anticipated it and already provided my commander with a full briefing on the situation, securing a letter attesting to my stable mental state and exemplary service record. 2 days later, I was logging training schedules at my desk when my phone buzzed. Claire. Abby showed up at my apartment last night, she said, voice shaking. She was screaming that I'd ruined her life, that I was dead to the family. When my roommate tried to calm her down, Abby pushed her into a wall. We had to call the police. Claire had filed for a temporary restraining order. Abby's parents had immediately closed ranks around their favorite daughter, cutting Claire off completely. They're saying I destroyed the family with my pathological jealousy and lies. Dad's threatening to write me out of the will. Mom won't even take my calls. I've got nowhere to go. My roommate's freaking out about Abby coming back. I wasn't interested in Claire romantically, but I did know Garcia, an E7 in the motor pool who had a rental property sitting empty between tenants. Let me make a call, I told her. I might know a place you can stay temporarily. I arranged a month-to-month rental at a fair rate, helped Claire move the essentials from her apartment one evening after PT. Basic human decency, nothing more. When Abby found out through mutual connections, the narrative shifted immediately. Suddenly, according to her version spread through the Basewives Facebook group, Claire and I had been having an affair all along. We'd conspired to break up her perfect family out of spite and lust. The story spread through certain social circles, particularly among the military spouses who'd been friendly with Abby. The rumors reached ridiculous proportions. According to base gossip, Claire and I had been secretly meeting during family gatherings for years. Every time I'd gone to the garage to get more ice or check on something in the truck, I'd apparently been sneaking off for quickies with my sister-in-law. Every training rotation had been cover for romantic getaways. Every deployment had seen Claire visiting me overseas. The timeline was physically impossible, but that didn't stop the speculation. Abby's status as a therapist for military families gave her narrative extra weight. She knew exactly how to phrase things to sound professional and concerned rather than vindictive. "I'm worried about Dean's state of mind" sounds a lot better than "I'm trying to destroy his reputation because he caught me lying." I didn't engage with the rumors. In the Army, you learn quickly that defending yourself against every accusation just gives them oxygen. Better to execute your mission with discipline and let your actions speak. My direct chain of command knew the truth. My squad had my back. The guys who'd served with me through 2 deployments weren't about to believe I'd suddenly turned into some unstable threat. That was enough. I maintained a strict digital discipline during this period. No angry texts, no social media rants, no drunk dialing at 2 a.m. The same compartmentalization that keeps you alive in combat zones served me well in divorce proceedings. The hardest moment came 3 weeks into the separation. My phone rang just after I'd finished dinner in my sparse apartment, a microwave meal at a fold-out table I'd grabbed from the PX for $30. "Dad?" Ethan's small voice hit me like a round to the chest. "When are you coming home? Mommy keeps crying in her room." I sat down heavily on the edge of my bed. "Hey, buddy. Sometimes grown-ups need to live in different houses for a while. But I want you to know that none of this is your fault, and I'll always be here for you, just in a different way now. But who's going to help me build my Lego space station? And you promised we'd go fishing when it got warmer. I can still help with your Legos, and we'll definitely go fishing. I'll talk to your mom about when I can come see you. I love you, kiddo." "Love you too, Daddy." After hanging up, I sat motionless for a long time. In Afghanistan, I'd once held pressure on a buddy's arterial wound for 18 minutes while waiting for medevac. That had been easier than this conversation. The next day, I contacted Abby through our attorneys to establish temporary visitation. She initially refused, claiming my abandonment had traumatized Ethan. My attorney countered with a motion for court-ordered visitation, pointing out that denying access would only further harm the child. She relented rather than face a judge, and we established a weekend schedule. That first Saturday pickup was tense. Abby hovered in the doorway, arms crossed, as Ethan gathered his backpack and favorite action figures. She'd clearly been coaching him. He looked nervous, hesitant, not the energetic kid who used to launch himself into my arms when I came home. "Hey there, soldier," I said, kneeling to his level. "How about we go check out that new dinosaur exhibit at the museum? The one with the T-Rex skeleton?" His eyes lit up briefly before darting toward his mother. "Is that okay?" "Your dad can take you wherever he wants during his time," Abby said tightly. "Just be home by 7 for your bath." I bit back a comment about how she'd suddenly become concerned with schedules when she'd been perfectly fine, letting him stay up past midnight when it suited her plans. No point fighting in front of the kid. By the end of that first day, Ethan was back to his normal self. We built dinosaur models from the museum gift shop, grabbed pizza at his favorite place, and watched an hour of those weird YouTube videos where grown men play with action figures. Simple stuff, but it mattered. "Can I stay at your new house sometime?" he asked as I drove him home. "Working on it, buddy. Need to get a proper bed for you first." In truth, I was already setting up a room for him. Blue walls like his room at home, new Lego storage containers, even the same nightlight. But I didn't want to make promises I couldn't keep, given Abby's determined efforts to limit my access. The divorce proceedings stretched over 5 months. Abby hired an aggressive attorney who specialized in military divorces, clearly expecting to take me for everything they could get based on my long-term status as Ethan's father. They miscalculated. The judge was a former JAG officer who didn't appreciate Abby's attorney's attempts to paint me as abandoning my family. When presented with the paternity fraud evidence, the emails, the DNA test, the timeline of deception, his demeanor shifted noticeably. "The court is troubled by the deliberate nature of the deception in this case," he noted during the final hearing. "While Arizona law does establish presumptive paternity based on the duration of Mr. Reynolds' relationship with the child, The court recognizes the extraordinary circumstances of this case. I wasn't removed from Ethan's birth certificate. That would require the biological father's involvement. But I was granted significant relief from ongoing support obligations. The house would be sold, with proceeds split equally. My military pension would remain untouched by the settlement. After the judgment, Abby's attorney approached mine outside the courtroom, floating a potential appeal. My attorney simply handed him a folder containing Abby's documented inappropriate discussions of client cases on social media, screenshots provided by a former colleague who had ethical concerns. Nothing illegal, but certainly enough to trigger a review by the licensing board if it came to light during an appeal. They withdrew the threat the next day. Life settled into a new routine. Work, gym, online courses in cybersecurity, planning ahead for civilian life after my 20 were up. The apartment gradually became less of a temporary FOB and more of an actual home. Added a decent TV, a comfortable couch, some proper kitchen equipment, started reconnecting with guys from my unit who I'd lost touch with during marriage. Martinez and Thompson would come over for UFC fights. Eventually joined their weekly poker game where I consistently lost about $40 a night, but considered it cheap therapy. Every other weekend, Ethan would stay with me. I'd take him hiking at Kartchner Caverns, fishing at Patagonia Lake, or just spending a Saturday building increasingly complex Lego structures. He'd chatter about school, friends, the lizard he'd seen in the backyard, normal kid stuff. As far as he was concerned, I was dad. The strange thing was how my relationship with Ethan actually improved after the divorce. With Abby's constant micromanagement removed, I could parent on my own terms. No more negotiations about whether he could have 5 more minutes before bedtime. No more debates about whether climbing trees was too dangerous. Just me and my boy figuring things out together. Abby occasionally tried to test boundaries. She'd forget to pack Ethan's medication for allergies, then text that I needed to drop by and pick it up, conveniently when she was just out of the shower or making dinner. Manipulation attempts that I sidestepped by keeping duplicate supplies at my place and maintaining strict communication through the co-parenting app recommended by the court. I never badmouthed her to Ethan, never corrected him when he called me dad, never let on that there was anything unusual about our situation. Kids are perceptive. They know when they're being used as weapons in adult conflicts. I refused to do that to him. 6 months after the divorce finalized, I was changing oil on my truck when a familiar SUV pulled into my apartment complex. Abby stepped out looking nothing like the polished therapist I'd been married to. Hair in a messy ponytail, faded jeans, and a worn-out college sweatshirt. "Dean," she said, eyes on the ground. "Can we talk?" I wiped my hands on a rag and gestured toward my door. Abby perched on the edge of the couch like she was ready to flee. "Ethan got accepted to that STEM charter academy," she said. "The one with the robotics program. It's the best education in the area, but the tuition—" "You want money," she flinched. "My practice has lost half its clients. Military community gossip spread fast. Dad's scaling back his hospital hours. They've been helping with my condo payments." The fancy private practice office downtown had been replaced by a small suite in a medical plaza on the outskirts of town. Her designer wardrobe was noticeably absent. The Subaru in my parking lot had a dent in the rear bumper that hadn't been fixed. Small tells that confirmed her financial situation had deteriorated significantly. What happened to the settlement money from the house? Gone. Legal fees took most of it. What about Justin? Surely Ethan's real father could help out. Her face flushed red. I never told him. He moved to Seattle right after Dad's party. I wasn't surprised. Justin had been Claire's boyfriend after all. Abby had just been a convenient hookup at a party. The kind of guy who wears hemp bracelets and talks about conscious uncoupling isn't exactly lining up to pay child support. "I've tried everything," she continued, voice cracking. "Extra clients, cut every expense, moved to the smallest condo. Mom and Dad helped until their retirement accounts took a hit, and they had to downsize." I could see the toll the last year had taken. The carefully maintained facade of the successful therapist and perfect mother had crumbled. Now she was just another single mom struggling to make ends meet. The power dynamic had completely reversed. I pulled up my financial spreadsheets. Military precision applied to personal finance. "I'll pay for his tuition," I said. "Directly to the school, not through you. We'll formalize it legally." Relief flooded her face, followed by shame when she registered my terms. "That's fair. Thank you. And I want formal visitation rights. Every other weekend, holidays split evenly, summer vacation time, all legal and binding." She nodded quickly. "Of course. Ethan misses you. He asks about you constantly. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for him." "I know." She hesitated. "The divorce. It wasn't what I wanted. If I could go back, I cut her off. But you can't, and neither can I. As she left, she paused at the door. For what it's worth, you were always the better parent, the more stable one. I didn't respond. Nothing to say. Over the next year, I established a routine with Ethan. Every other weekend, Wednesday dinners, split holidays. Took him fishing at Patagonia Lake, helped with science projects, added a college fund that Abby doesn't know about, kept it in a separate investment account under my name only, just in case. Ethan's doing well at the STEM Academy. Built a robot that won second place in the regional competition. Started talking about becoming an engineer. Kid's got a good head on his shoulders. Analytical, methodical, persistent. Traits that have nothing to do with biology and everything to do with who raised him. Abby's life settled into a diminished version of what it was. Her practice never recovered fully. The house we'd owned together replaced by a small condo. Her parents downsized from their sprawling home to a townhouse in a retirement community. When Ethan described visiting his grandparents' new place, I recognized it immediately. One of those cookie-cutter senior communities where the HOA dictates everything from mailbox color to what kinds of birds you can feed. Quite the step down from their previous 4-bedroom colonial with the heated pool and 3-car garage. Financial karma at work. Abby started dating again about 10 months after our divorce finalized. Some pharmaceutical rep she met through professional circles. Ethan mentioned him once, saying, "Mom's friend Dave stays over sometimes." I kept my face neutral. Asked if Dave was nice to him. Ethan shrugged in that way kids do when adults are irrelevant to their world. He tries to talk about sports but doesn't know anything about the Cardinals. The guy wasn't mistreating the kid, and that's all I cared about. Not my business who Abby sleeps with anymore. Never really was, apparently. I had a few dates myself. Nothing serious. A physical therapist from the base gym. An accountant Martinez's wife introduced me to. A third-grade teacher I met at Ethan's school science fair. Nice women, but the timing wasn't right. Still had too much to process before bringing someone else into the equation. Claire eventually moved to Phoenix for a job with an actual marketing firm. Not one of her usual opportunities, but a legitimate position with benefits and everything. We still grab coffee occasionally when she's in town visiting Ethan. Her parents reluctantly reconciled with her after about a year of silence, though the relationship remains strained. She seems happier now, more settled. I ran into Abby's father at Ethan's school science fair last month. He tried to make small talk, like nothing had happened, commenting on the weather and asking about my promotion prospects. I kept it professional. As we were walking away, he grabbed my arm. "You destroyed my daughter's life," he said quietly. "Was it worth it?" I looked at him for a long moment. "I didn't destroy anything. She did this to herself." He glared at me, but there was something defeated in his eyes. The man who'd spent his career literally holding people's hearts in his hands couldn't fix this situation with his money or connections. That's what no one seems to understand. I didn't trash her reputation or key her car. I simply stepped back and let reality take its course. She built her life on lies. And when those lies couldn't stand anymore, everything came down with it. Some guys at the base ask if I got revenge. They expect stories about public humiliation or financial destruction. But that's not how professionals operate. Why use a sledgehammer when a scalpel will do? Sometimes, the truth is the most painful revenge of all.